Well guys, Papa Pepper back once again here at the Abundant Harvest Homestead. That part of my life, what you guys are about to see, turned into a whole lot more of a mess than I hoped it was going to be. But you don't always get what you hope for. I was running into a situation as I was progressing on our property, and I want to rotationally graze the sheep and the goats and our cow around the outside, and then have us some of the poultry, garden stuff on the inside of the property. But I started with really raw land. So that means there's trees and briars and poison ivy and all sorts of plants that have varying degrees of usefulness or just not being useful at all at a degree of them. So I wanted to kind of phase through in a way that made sense. But I got a little overzealous in the expansion of the garden, and it wouldn't be as bad if I wasn't growing so much on trellises. So what happened is I wound up with a number of trees that were leaning over some of the garden, and some big trellises that were wound up being right underneath them. And it got to the point where I was going to be fencing that part in again, letting the animals run around the outside of there. And I said, before I fence this, before I go any further with my garden, I've got to drop these trees. I knew on my own I stood really no chance of not having it just fall completely on my cold hardy kiwi trellis. So I thought, okay. My parents decided to come down for a visit. They've been waiting for months to come down for a visit, but with all the restrictions, all the things, they've been keeping very much to themselves. The few times they venture out into public, you know, they look like this. They wear a mask, they do whatever. Finally, some green lights happened. We'd been really far removed from a lot of things. Said, okay, you guys get the green light, feel free to come down. My dad's very helpful, so he said, what projects do you have that you'd like to work? And I have a to-do list, and then I have a to-do list for when I've got another guy. And I said, this is one of the things on my to-do list, and it's really one of the things I've got to progress on next on my property. So we gave it a go together because that way I would have a chance of not dropping it right where I didn't want it to be. So recently some people have been asking for a garden tour again. So we kind of approached the midway point of May. That's not necessarily a bad idea to kind of show an update. But also when you're starting with raw land and turning into a functioning homestead, there's an amount of phasing out the existing and replacing with something better or more beneficial or something you want that comes into play. And one thing I did was I didn't exactly take out as much of the trees and different stuff that I wanted to ahead of time, and then I started putting up structures like this kiwi trellis that now has a tree right through the middle of it. Some of it's salvageable, but I figured the way that the tree was leaning, there was really no way to avoid this, but I hoped for the best. So gave it a go, and as I presumed, it didn't work out too good. So I've got cold hardy kiwis growing on here, I've got peas growing on here, and I've got some Chinese red noodle beans. And right now it looks about like that because that big tree came falling through. I'm gonna try to clean this up without hurting the actual cold hardy kiwi vines and see where we go from there. But this is not exactly what I was hoping for, but what I thought was probable. We'll see. So we were trying to leave it hanging on this edge with a wedge cut over here and driving some stuff in from that way, some wedges, but this was all dead and just snapped off, sending it right up that way. But on the bright side, it could have took out both of these little structures. This one's nowhere near as beefy as the cold hardy kiwi one, but now it got whomped, so I'm gonna clean that up. So I was gonna show you guys some video footage, fast forwarded, of us cleaning up that mess, but the camera battery died, and when that happens, it doesn't save anything up until that point. It doesn't like use its last ditch effort, little bit of power to save a file or anything. It just shuts off and everything you recorded is forever lost. But I can show you the effects. So here we go. This is what's still here. And that was, I don't know, I think what do you think it was, black walnut?
No idea.
No, yeah, something with jaglone in it though, for sure. Maybe you guys know. So this one got kind of womped. See that? I'll have to straighten that back out. This is one of my cold hardy kiwi vines. They all survived, but then coming through here, had to watch out for all this wire that we had stuff strung up with. All these cedars are now womped down. On the bright side, the structure, except for the upper canopy, is still in place. And some of these are really long, and I was really looking forward to seeing how they would do this year. If any broke off, I'll just try to propagate them. But now I've got a restoration to deal with. But I wanted to get these last couple trees out of this area that were leaning this way. We've got one left right there. And of course it's over my garden area stuff right now. All this is off to the side. I'm going to fence in this area again and just turn this over to the sheep and goats. Let them mow everything down. But there was a series of 4 trees here on the perimeter that were leaning over the garden area, and that's kind of part of it. If you're turning raw land into a functioning homestead, if you're expanding some stuff, take out the big trees before you put up your fences, before you build big structures for your garden. Otherwise, there's just going to be a problem later. And, you know, if these trees get older, that'd be even a bigger problem. So we're going to see what we can do here. And hopefully on this last one, have a better success than the previous one. So thankfully that one went a whole lot better than the other one, which makes us happy.
I think the other one would have had a chance too.
Yeah, if it wasn't dead over there.
If it wasn't dead at the bottom, let go.
I think we could have. So that would have got this one and all this stuff. Overall, the damage isn't too bad. It's just like the biggest, toughest, best structure I had in this entire garden, because these female cold hardy kiwis can put out somewhere people say 100 or 200 pounds per plant. So I'll just retighten all my wires, put some new stuff at the top, go back to the old drawing page. But you know, even at this stage of my game, I'll be 40 later this year, and apparently I can still get myself into more trouble than even my daddy can get me out of. Some things you don't outgrow. So just by way of reminder, a couple things to think about with this video. Build things as strong as you can, but don't build them until the area is really clear. You don't want to have things falling on top of your stuff. If a tree is leaning like this, take it out when it's young, because when it gets really big, it's going to be much more of a beast to deal with, much more of an issue. And as always, you know, be safe and ask for help when you can. Even with cutting that tree, I'd cut the 2 before that, and that was number 3 of 4. And my dad was like, really, you want me to cut this one? I'm like, look, I can probably forgive you a lot easier than I could forgive myself if this lands up where I think it's going to. And if it wasn't for, you know, that end of the tree being dead, that would have held, and we could have spun it and it would have worked. But unfortunately, that's not what we're dealing with. It died, it snapped off, it went right on my kiwi trellis. But I'll rebuild. And the cool thing too is, you know, I think some of those were only planted last year. Maybe a year before that. I think they were planted last year. But they're young plants. They're not the beasts that they're going to turn into. And that's one thing too. If you're planting cold hardy kiwi, don't put just a little plastic trellis next to your house and think that you're going to plant it there and have it be good. Because those things are a beast. In a lot of places, I think some places up in Maine or areas like that, it's actually taking over entire forests and considered to be quite invasive. I think my daughter's feeding the cow over here, and that's probably more entertaining, so I will. Is it done? It's all eaten up? So the cow at this point is done. Red Pepper is just trying to get away from it because there is no more to give it. But the cow has another idea. The cow says, Feed me still, feed me still. So child, compared to when we first got that cow, is it bigger?
Yeah, she's a lot wider and she's a lot longer than she was when she was just born.
So just remember to treat her gently and keep kind of the charge over her that when she gets bigger, she'll be friendly with us. I would not let her try to nurse from between your legs. Come on out and we will we'll deal with things later. I don't think we named that thing yet.
Nope.
I was thinking Cowgirl. Well, actually, I called her Cowgirl. And Mama Pepper thought that was a good name. Some people suggested Coco. Grandpa, my dad once had one named Charmin. Which I don't know. With all the toilet paper shortages, somebody might steal our cow if we call her Charmin at this point. Alright guys, thankfully everyone was safe. The show must go on. And yeah, I don't have that much to kind of redo. And I've even got, I'll see which ones of those cedars I can replace, because that's what I was using for some of that stuff. I've got a couple other ones sitting there in the log pile and more in the woods that we recently took down. So we'll get there. We'll do it. And, you know, it is what it is. I don't really entirely care. Life would be easier if I didn't destroy stuff I've been working hard on. But when I do, then that's the life I get to deal with. I'll see you guys next time. Papa out.